I've always wanted to do a show with women of different generations, backgrounds, and views. We call it The View.
Hello, everyone. It is The View History here today with a new episode. I'm Sarah Kellison, the host of The View History, and today we have a lot to talk about ABC's The View and going through the 25 years of the show's history on this podcast, but also keeping it a little current as well. So we'll do a little bit of that. So today I am drinking. I have to always mix a drink right before any podcast, just because I know we're going to be going to areas that are crazy a little bit. So I'm working. Oh my God, today it's such a hot day. I wore the hottest thing ever. Never wear black in the heat, of course. But I'm really loving the drink I have today. It's like this Pellegrino water that's tangerine and strawberry, and I put a little hint of limoncello, sorry, in it, and it's the perfect drink. So I don't know what this is gonna do to me in the next hour, but here we are. So we have lots to talk about today. Today we're gonna discuss, first and foremost, is that we're gonna talk about what the conservatives, I was gonna say conservatorship seat, the conservative seat was in the beginning and how it evolved over time. And I kind of want to bring you guys into that area a little bit. So it first started off as Barbara wanting just 4 people on the table. And eventually it just started molding into 5 with Joy as the addition, which we're going to get into another episode of how Joy's seat has evolved over time and what other seats that connects with. But they wanted something that was different. I think someone there to give a polarizing point of view in some form, and they didn't know how to exactly go about it, because in 1997 we weren't so hyper political. It wasn't left or right, and we didn't base people's personality off of that. In fact, we would just, people would just vote either conservative or liberal, and it wasn't such a big thing. As of now, it's such a different game set. It's totally opposite to now, where if you say you're one thing, you're all of the following, So it first started off with Barbara, but Barbara originally was she thought a good way to get a different type of perspective was putting a young person in that seat. And, people still beg for a young person there, actually, especially for this conservative seat. But the original person was Debbie Metnopoulos, and she was known as the young one at the table, and she could bring in a youthful perspective of how a younger person sees things. Because truthfully, a younger person can see things a lot differently than someone that's older, wiser, more mature, all of those things, who's had a lot of life experience, truthfully. So I see where Barbara was going with that exactly, but there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of things with a younger person that you have to be prepared for. And I'm a young person myself, so I can speak to this. Because a young person is still mentally developing themselves. She was, I think, 23, 24 when she was on the show. And at 23, 24, I'm ahead of that curve. I'm 26. But even I remember myself at 23 and 24 and being not as mentally evolved and being not even knowing myself fully. And I think from 23 to 26, that's a jump for me, because you begin to get older and you begin to get wiser, and you understand that you grow, and you realize what's really useful in life and what I don't need at all. And I think I'm really glad that I've opened my eyes to that in a lot of ways, and especially in the past year, especially I've realized, what do I really want? What do I really need? And what's worth the fight for, that's going to benefit myself. And I think Debbie was at an age where she was still developing herself. She was still, figuring out who she was and who she wanted to be, truthfully, because she probably didn't, because she was only an intern at MTV prior. She had no television experience. And that's hard on a young person, especially being casted in the news as like this person that's like not considered the smartest. And I think the media can be an enemy in a lot of ways. They can be your best friend, but they can also be the enemy. And I feel in a lot of ways, if you don't give an opinion or something that fits their narrative of how everyone sees it, they will ambush you and outcast you and make you feel like an outsider. And because the media, I do feel, is pushed in different directions. And it's also different on which areas you're going, because any area there will be a bias. I personally try to look at more independent media, not something that leans a certain way, especially in this day and age. This was before social media. Celebrities and people on TV were considered as like mythological creatures. Whereas now we see them on social media, we humanize them a lot more now. But in this day and age, we just saw them as someone that was hopeless, useless if they didn't give the best opinion. And she was known for giving dumb opinions, according to People magazine. And to be honest, in my opinion, People magazine doesn't always give the smartest opinions either, so they're one to talk. Which Debbie became known for. And then later on, people thought as well that since Elisabeth didn't conform to a certain way, she was dumb, which a lot of people that worked with her said she's actually a really smart individual. Like Star Jones said on Watch What Happens Live, she's a very smart, kind lady that people may not fully understand in a 360-degree way. You can disagree with her on politics, but she could be a very academically smart person. She could be a very scientific smart person, or it doesn't have to be just one form of smarts. There's not always one form of it. There's different facets to everyone, and people don't always understand that when it comes to these View co-hosts. Debbie would cause mess. It's been there since the beginning. This is conflict-driven TV, people. So she would get into it, especially with Star Jones specifically. There's lots of clips of her and her challenging Star and Star challenging her.
She's never even had detention in her life.
Never denied.
I mean, if taking a couple sips of sangria by the time you're senior is the worst thing you're doing, come on.
What does zero tolerance mean, though? I'm going to play devil's advocate. If zero tolerance means you may not do it, then is it true, or are we just going to make exceptions? The smart, wait. The smart kids in this category, if they have a couple sips, it's okay. But the dumb, long hair person sitting in the corner who has never gotten in trouble but had a couple of sips, would you feel the same way about that person?
Yes, you should. There should be exceptions. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Then it's not zero.
But all laws have exceptions. There's zero tolerance for murder in this country, but not everybody's treated the same when they're
self-defense. There are defenses to murder, but there is no defense to zero tolerance for drinking. Drink this right here.
It's ridiculous. These people are comparing gun-toting to taking a sip of booze.
But that was a little ridiculous. I bet you when the rule. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joy.
I was going to agree with you, actually, because I think, in a way, not that I'm so gung-ho about zero tolerance, but it is the responsibility of the person to make decisions for herself. You don't say, okay, I'm going to have the sangria because the boss tells you to do it.
I don't think the punishment fit the crime. You could have given her maybe the 10-day suspension, but to keep her off the campus till January.
What if she had just sucked on the lemon and the orange in the sangria?
So much spunk. She took that country by storm and said, you know what, the hell with your rules, Queenie. I don't care. Your son is cheating on me. I want out.
And I want to cheat on him, too. Let's add that in there.
She had a really hard life,
Oh, come on. Oh, Debbie, will somebody please go to commercial soon? She was the princess. She had access to all the queen's jewels.
Just like Jackie O did not have a happy life either.
That is what you do when you're hungry.
Who do you think the next celebrity will be to put his or her stuff on there?
And I think there was a good back and forth with them. And I think they both enjoyed that. And I think Star enjoys and appreciates people that are willing to challenge her a bit. And I think in a way that's healthy and productive. And I think Debbie did that. I think Lisa did that. And I think Elisabeth did that for her. So that's why she respects those women. There's a sense of respect. So it was Debbie versus Star in the beginning because Joy wasn't really full-time at that point. Debbie versus Star, and then it became Joy versus Elisabeth later on. But that was the incarnation of this seat pretty much. And Debbie also got scrutinized for being pretty much for being a 23-year-old. And she was scrutinized for going to clubs and stuff. I think she even went to strip clubs at one point. And the people behind the scenes hated that because it was giving a lot of bad attention. Because in this time and period, celebrities were looked as mythological creatures. This was before social media, so they're not supposed to get in trouble. And once they get in trouble, they're like going to end up in jail or something, especially coming from a young person, because this is in the era of Dana Plato and people of that nature who were considered bad girls in Hollywood, and they would assume she would be part of that in some way, which she never was. All 23 and 24-year-olds go through that, and I think Debbie has said this in the past that Barbara and Bill regret the way they went about it with her, because they thought it was a horrible thing. They had to cover it up because she was considered a party girl. And in that time, our society was extremely socially conservative, where if you went to a club or something, you were written off as like a drunk, an alcoholic, all these endless names of things. And I think it was unfair to her. And I think a lot of that press has aged poorly and is in bad taste now. And I think Barbara and Bill Getty realized that. And they've had conversations with Debbie when she came back a few times, and they've had conversations behind the scenes. In fact, I know for a fact that they did about if she went to a strip club or a club nowadays, they would say, "What did you do at the club?" Instead of like, "Oh my God, went to a club, you slut," I don't think they said it like that, but and then when she went on Howard Stern, actually right before she was fired from the show, that was the last straw for Barbara. And that's when I think she was dissing all the inside and behind the scene details about The View in 1998. And Barbara, that was the last straw with Barbara. That was when she was like, she's out of here. And there were also people behind the scenes that were it created this environment, because a lot of people behind the scenes were talking behind your back and everything. And they were so, judgmental towards her, because Barbara had a certain opinion about her and developed one over time. And I think that didn't play. And I think, again, she just had a different perspective and a different way of looking at life. And she was just doing what any 23-year-old would have done. So shaming her and doing all that did not age well. And I'm glad she got to come back to the show. I'm glad she had her redemption eras. She might be in villain era again, second villain era again, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. But then they had, after Debbie, Lisa come in. They were looking for someone who was more reserved and not going to go to clubs or anything, because they wanted to avoid that type of press, because that was making them look bad in the press. And this was 1999, mind you. This wasn't even the 21st century yet. So when Lisa got there, it was between Lisa, Vanessa Sanchez, and Rachel Campos Duffy. And Lisa won that. And she won based off of her intellect. She was extremely reserved in terms of even showing herself personally to the ladies. So they had to make up stories about her. And there was a very reserved nature to her that was too reserved. And they needed someone who was going to more be themselves. As well, she was someone who could win arguments against the ladies. She could give an independent perspective and a different perspective. And she's even proven that recently, that she can give a total independent perspective of something that was not added to the conversation that could be there. And her guest co-hosting has been amazing this season. Like, she's outdone some of even the conservative guest co-hosts, in my opinion. Well, actually, not even in my opinion. Objectively speaking, I could say that she has given an independent perspective that shook up the table. And she wasn't just going from 5 bullet points, this is what it is. She was going from something that was not added to the conversation to add to it, and in a very intellectual way. And she brought that back then, and she brings that now. However, I feel Barbara didn't like that. Truthfully, I get a vibe that they were like, they couldn't really, outsmart her. I do believe, I can honestly say this about the show, they don't want someone who can necessarily win an argument there, but I think it's good to have someone that can win an argument that brings a different perspective that's not in their vein necessarily or their lane, because it challenges them and it makes them do better. Truthfully, it makes them, Lindsay Granger has proven that. And I really enjoy Lisa. I appreciate Lisa. But again, she was too reserved in terms of personality. So they needed to bring someone who had the brains of Lisa, well, not necessarily the brains of Lisa, but who could bring an intellectual perspective, like an intelligent perspective of some sort to the table, but can also be, that can go off the rails a little bit, that has some personality, a polarizing personality, like Debbie had. Because Debbie was unpolished and unhinged and had that polarizing personality where she'll just say whatever she wants and she'll just dive in. And in the days of Debbie, this was 1997, 1998, women were looked as intellect and perfect types in that era. So, and they had to conform to that narrative because America was very socially conservative in this era, specifically in the 90s still, coming off of Reagan and Bush. And even if though it was Bill Clinton era, it was still socially conservative. I mean, let's look at the Clinton scandal. Like, they impeached him for sleeping with Monica Lewinsky. So that's why Debbie did not work in her era. She would have worked better in like 2014 or even in 2003. She would have worked much better there, and she would have lasted longer there. But especially when you're in a show like The View, where it was groundbreaking just to talk about politics in general, with women talking about politics in general was groundbreaking in 1997. With a panel show talking about politics, with a panel show of women talking about politics in general was groundbreaking in 1997. And, being very out there and very wow, like pop in 1997 was considered groundbreaking. And this was before Britney Spears and younger girls were taking over the scene and having women being sexualized and being modernizing women's sexuality and nature. Like, this was right before that movement specifically. So this was actually at the beginning of that movement. But by 2003, all of that was more open and acceptable, which is why Elisabeth came in at the right time. I don't think she could have worked in 1997. I think she worked in 2003 to 2013 perfectly, because they took a little bit of Debbie, a little bit of Lisa, and Bill Getty coached Elisabeth to find her direction, which I think the coaching part by Bill Getty is the smartest thing he could have done. I think that's the smartest thing he could have done, because it gave her a sense of direction, which made her last as the 4th longest co-host of this show of all time. In my opinion, there is only one conservative that has been on the show that has done the job to exception, and no one else. There's only one conservative for the show, and that's Elisabeth Hasselbeck. Everyone else after tried to be, but didn't succeed necessarily. But I'm open to new interpretations of this, whether it is so. But that's just me as like a viewer who I grew up with the panel of Whoopi, Joy, Elisabeth, Sherry, Barbara, Rosie O'Donnell, Meredith Starr. I loved all those panels because I think those were the peak moments of the show. I think those were the best moments of the show. I don't think the show will ever get to that level again necessarily, but who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But I appreciate the effort that they try nowadays. I really do, actually. And speaking about effort that they are doing nowadays, so we have a lot to talk about. I feel like I'm gonna, oh my God, I feel so dizzy. Okay, I'm just gonna pour some drink here and we're gonna get started on the next topic because I promised you guys that we would talk about this today. So, let's talk about SC Cupp a little bit. Yeah. Let's talk about SC Cupp a little bit. So, if you saw the last episode of The View History, you would know that I put SC Cupp last place on the ranking system. That thank you to Buzzkill Bayar for doing that. We appreciate you making boxes for us and executing them to excellence. So SC Cupp sabotaged her audition on purpose. Allegedly, of course, but you know, let's like really I really feel like we're about to go to the nail salon right now, and we're gonna get clear coat, and we're just gonna like sit back and relax. Okay, so here's the thing. The reason when she auditioned, she was agreeing with everything Joy was saying, and when you're auditioning for the conservative on this panel, and here's the thing, she's auditioned in the past, so she knows how this position exactly works. She knows how it exactly works. So that's why I'm suspicious. And I'm going to say this. I do think Trump definitely changed her, just like how it changed many conservatives. But there are people on the right that still, like people who are actually right and support Trump and stuff, that still like her specifically. So she can't be that left on things, truthfully. I don't really believe she's fully left on things. And I have a feeling that there was some conflict with her and her friend Meghan McCain, who just recently left The View. I have a feeling that, because SC Cupp on Instagram announced that she was auditioning, she was coming to The View in late August, early September. And I have a feeling that created some conflict somehow. And I also think, because it's a weird situation. It is a weird situation when you look at it. Because first off, SC Cupp saw how Meghan and Abby's friendship was ruined because of them being on The View together, because they clashed. And Meghan has unfollowed Abby since November, since she was last on The View. And there were some weird things that were going on that I found in Abby's podcast interview with The View. By the way, the Behind the Table podcast is flawless. Like, I love that podcast. Like, we need a second season because it's fabulous. It's all the people that work on that. I really appreciate that work, and we found out a lot of things. But on that podcast, it was weird that Sarah kept brought up Meghan, and Abby didn't respond to anything. She didn't even say Meghan's name on that. And then when she came to The View in November, Joy made a shady comment and Abby laughed at that and everything. So I think that friendship was definitely ruined, and there was a lot of weird things with it. I don't want to get into details about that, but there are things people do know and people don't know, and you have to really do your own research on that. But with that being said, it is weird for friends to work together. But it is also weirder and weird, actually. Actually, it's both weird, but it's also weird for friends to replace each other at each other's jobs. And like, that's the truth, because it's like, It looks like, girl, I stole your job. I snatched your job and I stole it. That's what it looks like. So honestly, I think SC Cupp realized the position that she truthfully was in. And she was like, oh my God, I'm replacing my best friend at this job. And I don't know how she feels about this. And it was weird because SC Cupp appeared on Watch What Happens Live with Megan that same week. She auditioned. And apparently, I think it was Buzzkill Bear. Sorry if I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here, but Buzzkill Bear always has the good tea, always has the good clips for us. So that's just my favorite view Twitter ever. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just giving like a full-on endorsement here, but it's true. But I believe they were the ones that said there was a full version of the Watch What Happens Live where SC Cupp openly said she eliminated herself from the competition as soon as she was done the audition. And I totally could see that because the way she was auditioning didn't feel like an audition. It just felt like she was there. It felt like another Tuesday or something, truthfully. Like Sherry Shepherd was giving more opposing view than SC Cupp. If I'm being truthful here, objectively speaking, like, this is really hitting me. So I think SC Cupp, truthfully, I think SC Cupp was the choice for 2014, and she should have been the choice for 2014. I truthfully think the show's fate would have been a lot different in season 18 if SC Cupp was there. I think she was the best, truthfully, in 2014. Her and Rachel Campos Duffy were the ones who gave the opposing view and did the job where the job would be successful. However, that has changed with time. And if she didn't sabotage her audition, which I with all that being said, it's safe to say to me, I feel like she sabotaged her audition to not have conflict with her friend Megan because it's an awkward position, like I said. And I think that's a fair thing. And I think I would rank her somewhere else if she didn't, and not last place if she didn't sabotage her audition. And I think if she gave a real audition to us and like showed us that she can give that opposing view, she would be ranked much higher in my list. Absolutely. But I can't really give her a real review because eliminated means you are just like, well, you didn't really do anything because you're doing this on purpose. So you didn't really audition those 2 days. So you see what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's SC Cupp. And she was one of the few people that I think she was Barbara approved, by the way. I think she was like in that section. Her and Rachel Campos Duffy were the two conservatives throughout the past decade, even that would come on as guest co-hosts every now and then. And that was someone that Barbara liked and respected. But I will say with this all being said, I do respect SC Cupp. And if this is with everything given what I've said here, if what she did was to give up a job for a friend, I admire that type of woman. I really do. Because I think someone who can give up a high-paying job to not ruin their friendship that could keep them stable and everything, that says a lot about a person, truthfully. That really does. And you have to give someone credit for that, for being a good friend and for being loyal like that. And I respect that. So I think she's a nice person. But I have liked when she was on The View years ago. I know everyone calls her Sippy Cupp. That's everyone that's OG knows it's Sippy Cupp, but I'm going to sip you out of my cup. So, yeah, that's the SC Cupp. That's Cupp Conspiracy. That sounds like a Watch What Happens Live segment. Anyways, let's talk about the conservative seat a little bit. I keep thinking conservatorship seat. It's too, I'm so all over the place. But, okay, so Lindsay Granger came back. And truthfully, objectively speaking, Lindsay Granger is the one. She is the one. Because, like, literally, like, there's no fail option. Like, Lindsay Granger came for 4 days. What could go wrong with that? Nothing went wrong. Nothing went wrong with her audition. She gave an opposing view. She even challenged them on stuff, which I loved. I love seeing a challenge and not just a circulation of the same talking points. I love seeing the women get challenged and for it to get, I love seeing some sparks. I love seeing some spice. It was like, ooh, that just put me in the right spot. So Lindsay Granger is definitely the one. I definitely think she needs to be the one to win. I think this is the seat. This is her seat. I feel having a Black conservative would bring in diversity to the news team, the ABC News team. I think as well that would bring diversity and showing people that not every Republican conservative is backwood bends from the wood or like a white person with blonde hair. Because we've seen that narrative so many times that I'm exhausted from that. And white people already have so much. And I think this is a good opportunity, to bring in that diversity. And I think it's a good opportunity to... it would bring in a more diverse audience. Like, I think you would get more people of color watching. I feel you'd get more people of the right watching because a lot of the people on the right seem to approve of Lindsay, which the last co-host didn't get that type of approval because her opinions were everywhere. So, whereas Lindsay can explain the points, I can tell she's using Bush talking points, I will say, but it's working. It's working for this show. It's creating sparks. It's getting people all weekend. The View was trending on Twitter. It was trending on Twitter because of that debate between Lindsay and Sunny and Anna that happened. That was a fiery debate. And I think it was interesting to see Sunny on Monday be totally quiet. It was very interesting. So I don't know if she was talked to or something, but that's a whole thing in itself. But I loved last week so much. It felt like the show was full. It felt like the show was whole. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm just drank too much or because I'm like getting emotional out. But like Tuesday to Friday, we have Elisabeth. You guys already know how I feel about this. I don't think she's I don't want to rehash this again. And I don't want to I'm not trying to throw her down or anything, but let's be real here. No, let's stop, please. Please. She doesn't stand up to the women or for herself even. I get that she worked in the Trump administration, but she's no longer there. And I don't want someone who I'm not sure about what they're about, really. Because I don't know if that's going to change if he got reelected. I have no idea. And I don't think she would go back to Trump because at this point, it's too late, truthfully. So I personally don't think she does the job at all to what Lindsay Granger does. I like Lindsay because I wasn't just liking that she was giving an opposing view. I liked her as a person too. She was very funny. She was very there was lots of personality. There was polarizing personality, but there was also this really good personality. I genuinely liked her. And she could roll with the punches. Her Instagram was so fire this weekend because she was just kind of laughing at something Joy said about her. And I love that she went with the joke. And Alyssa doesn't do any of that for us. And it's sad. And I wish I could say more about the second contender, but I can't. I don't think she's it. I really, we've already seen so many, I don't want to racialize this again, but we've seen so many white people in this position. Let's give it to someone who has a truthfully different perspective. A unicorn. Lindsay is a total unicorn. We've seen so many people like Elisabeth on the show, but Lindsay is so different from that. Yeah, and I wish if Alyssa stood up for herself or challenged the women a bit and just rolled with the punches in a way that felt authentic more so, not just her like saying, oh, I have to do this, otherwise people are going to think something of me, I would give her more credit. But I can't. I honestly can't, and I need to be truthful about that. And I'm sorry about that if there's anyone that I have said that. And I just don't think she has chemistry with the women at all. Like, she doesn't, there's not much connection there. And I think with Lindsay, there's way more connection. They could laugh with her. They all seem to embrace her. Like, Whoopi was bringing up her baby so many times, Lindsay's baby, like so many times. And I'm like, they don't give that same thing to Alyssa. I think, yeah, I feel bad, but you know, I have to say it for what it is. And the third person who's coming next week after is Stephanie Grisham, which I'm sure she's there to gossip. I'm sure she's there to go to the beauty salon and just tell us so much. I'm pretty sure they're just going to squeeze every last juice of Trump administration talk out of her. So, because this might be the last time we'll see her. But what I like about Stephanie Grisham is that she will go to fans, ask for help. And I like that. She takes our advice. We can message her. She'll take our advice and she'll execute it. And in order for her to do the job for what the job needs to do in order to win this job. And I think that's the smartest thing anyone could do. So, but I'm still for Team Lindsay. Like, Lindsay is my guaranteed. I like that she's not a famous person. I like that she doesn't work in an administration to get this job. I like someone who gets things off of their own merits and just for strictly what the job requires. The only other person that did that really was Elisabeth Hasselbeck. This is the closest to Elisabeth Hasselbeck we've gotten. And that's why I truthfully believe this is the correct answer. It's correct. We all know it's correct.
And I also just want to say, it's like nothing personal. Like, Alyssa, if you're listening, it's like nothing personal on you. I know you're a nice person. I know you're smart and everything, but I'm just objectively speaking about what I saw and what I'm literally protecting you, girl. Like, I am literally saving an iceberg running into one because I don't want you to crash. I think it's best for all of us if it was Lindsay Granger, because girl, Lindsay Granger is spicy. And I really loved what she was giving us last week. So, and I think that should be part of our everyday ritual. Like, I feel like I liked her. She was a good balance of everything, not personal, but can also give an opposing view in a debate. So I think it was a good challenge for everyone. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think this week's Alyssa Farah. Next week, we're going to have Stephanie Grisham spilling all the tea and gossip with her big eyes. And I love her big eyes. So there's something going on there. And then last week of May, it's a clear week. There is Kellyanne Conway, but I think she's just a guest. I don't think she's guest co-hosting because she has a book to promote. So last week of May is open. First week of June, we're going to have Lindsay Granger again. Second week is going to be Alyssa Farah. Third week is going to be Lindsay Granger. Fourth week is going to be Stephanie Grisham. That's how June, I think, is going to lay out. Then come July, we're going to start with first week with Lindsay Granger again. Second week, Alyssa Farah. Third week, Lindsay Granger. And then the fourth week will be whoever is picked, whether it's Alyssa or Lindsay, is going to be the one. I'm going to call it right now. I think that last week of July, whoever that last week is going to be the one to go into the fall as the new co-host. Because I don't think the first week which is the first week of August, is going to be the last week of the season. I think that's going to be reserved for something else. But we might see that person, whoever's picked, to be there during that last week of August. So that's what I think is going to happen. And I'm hoping they go with Lindsay Granger. I'm really hoping. I really adore her. I actually like her personally. Like, I think she's a nice person. She seems like a fun person. And she seems like a kind person, like overall. Like, you may not agree with her politics, but she doesn't seem like a bad person or anything. Like, I don't get that energy off of her, where I could say, hey, you know, like, you may disagree with her politics. Okay, that's fine. But she's not a bad person. Like, I don't think she's that type of person. And I'm the type of person that can separate person from politics usually, because I don't think politics is everything. Like, I don't think that's everything about a person. There's much more to a person, and there's much deeper connection to a person than just a political level. I'm getting really deep here. I'm getting really real ass deep here, because this lime citron drink, I forget what it's called, is really giving me like a whole philosophical vibe, because it's really too early for this, I find. Let's be real. And speaking of real, let's talk about the real a little bit. I know this is a podcast, but let's take a turn a little bit, because The Real has been canceled recently, as many of you might have known, but I wanted to talk about The Real and The View having a friendly relationship in a way, because I've noticed this, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I've noticed this, and compared it to The View and The Talk, where it's absolute rivalry. I can't talk. I've drank way too much, honey. It's because The Real does not have beef with The View, and they respect The View. In fact, because I've seen Lonnie Love talk about The View and even like quote The View sometimes on her Twitter, on her Instagram, and she's like the moderator of that show, I think. Well, I think they all kind of switch moderating, but I think Lonnie's like the main one. And she praises The View a lot. The View keeps having the real ladies keep coming on as guests. Like Garcelle Bouvet was on a few months ago, and Lonnie was on in the past year or so to promote her book. And they'll be having Jeannie Mai on in a few weeks. Like, I think next Friday, they'll be having Jeannie on. So that'll be very interesting to see Jeannie on. And also when they come to The View, they acknowledge The Real. Whereas if a talk host came on, they wouldn't acknowledge the talk. Like Sarah Gilbert was on to promote Roseanne a few years ago, and she was still on the talk at the time. And she was the only talk host to be currently on the talk that has guested on The View at the time. And they didn't advertise the talk at all. But they had a really cordial discussion, and it was very nice and friendly. And I think it's because the talk has, in the past, specifically with the way they promoted the talk in the beginning of the show, in the early years of that show, they always would find a way to diss The View. And I think it was in this very unclassy way, which is why they have this really bad reputation with The View and the people that work at The View, in fact. And I think that there's still bad blood there, because when Debbie Metnopoulos was there, I think the reason why Debbie's mad at The View is because she thought she was going to get a job at The View somehow. And that didn't happen, because Debbie was originally auditioning for the talk in summer 2021. She was auditioning for it. She went there at least 3 or 4 times. So she might have gotten the job if she didn't drop the audition. But I think the minute Megan left, there was talks about her coming back to The View. And she probably really wanted that job because her Home and Family show was ending at the time. So that would have been a good, easy way to make money. And I feel, judging from what happened, she was hyped up by someone at ABC or The View producers that she was going to get a job at The View. And she was like, okay, that pays a really good... I bet you The View was like, we'll pay you what the talk won't pay you. And I feel that's the whole atmosphere, like that's the discussion. And I think when they weren't really going to do that, Debbie went into second villain era mode. Like, she doesn't want anything to do with The View now, it seems like.
So that's what happened, and I think that's how deep the politics. Honestly, this is a very twisted dream, but I would love to see The View, The Talk, and The Real all do a crossover episode on The View. I would love to see that, just to see what would happen. It'd be very spicy and interesting. But like I said, there are real co-hosts that are supportive of The View, and I think that's really amazing. Like, I think that's fantastic. Garcelle, though, does explain about one of her experiences on The View, because before she was on The Real, she tested for The View back in season 18. Well, for season 18 to go into season 19. And she revealed it in her book, Love Me As I Am, that she said, Whoopi was being really testy with the producers, and Rosie Perez kicked her under her seat and told her to shut up, pretty much. That's pretty much what I got from it. But eventually, Whoopi and her made up and worked together on a movie called Caught in His Web, and they managed to fix things over time. Truthfully, what I think happened is that this was season 18 when this was happening. This was Whoopi's worst point with the show, truthfully. She hated it. She absolutely hated it. And I feel because there were people at that time, people that work there, that like Ben Sherwood, that I know she didn't get along with, who are now gone, by the way. It's very interesting that some people were trying to challenge an EGOT, and they got Egon. That's what happened. So, yeah, that's what happened. And I understand why Whoopi would have been upset. She also was going through grief at the time because she lost her brother to an aneurysm that year. So grief does all sorts of weird things to people. And a lot of people, specifically in June, like there was someone also who auditioned. Her name was Eliza or something. And we should really go into, we're going to have to do a whole episode on season 18 one day. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened, but there's this one other comedian that was on the show that complained saying Whoopi, Rosie Perez, and Nicole Wallace were not welcoming to her at all. And that's pretty much, that echoes Garcelle's experience. And I understand Whoopi's point of view on it. Rosie Perez, I think that was a little bit entitled. That sounded very entitled and rude of her. And she thinks this show was like The Talk, and it's not The Talk, honey. Like, it's really not. Like, girl, you need to get in there. You should know you've been, well, she was barely there that year because she treated, honestly, if you want to know what I think, Rosie Perez treated The View like it was beneath her, like it was a second job. And I got that vibe from her because she would always go on about her Broadway play whenever she was there. And she would treat The View, because she's been in the industry, let's not forget, for many, many, many decades as well, like Whoopi. And she's won awards for different movies she's done in the past. And she's been on like Soul Train and all that stuff. And so Rosie Perez came in with a certain level of fame entitlement, I feel, and this is why I'm not a fan of famous people being on this show, really. That's why I really want Lindsay Granger to get this job. And I just didn't appreciate her looking down. It always just felt like she was looking down on this job. So I wasn't surprised when she was gone. And truthfully, she was just pissed that she was fired in Variety, but honestly, she probably didn't really care to lose that job because it's just a little thing to her on her resume. Going back to Garcelle, Whoopi was okay with Garcelle saying all these things about her in her new book. And I think that says a lot about Whoopi. I think that says a lot about her character, because Whoopi seems to be okay with people saying what they need to say. Like, I think she's not mad at Megan or Rosie O'Donnell or Garcelle. She has no issues with people telling their truth. She's just not going to tell it. Like, she doesn't mind people telling their truth, even if it doesn't make her in the best light, because she understands that's their experience. And I think Whoopi understands that there's people with a different point of view outside of The View, even if they may not seem to like it, even if she may not like it. I think it says a lot about a person. And I think it's very mature for someone to say, you know, okay, you can go right ahead and do it. And I think one day Whoopi can find peace with all these people. Like Whoopi and Garcelle, if Garcelle's saying all this about Whoopi, then I think Whoopi and Rosie could make up. I think Whoopi and Megan could truthfully make up one day and just come together. But that's just my tea. That's just my 2 cents. There's some more I have to tell you guys, but I think today we'll just stop there. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all take a little time to enjoy The View history.